Business Incorporated, President Goodluck Jonathan declares his intention to contest the 2015 presidential election with a promise to eradicate corruption from all sectors of the nation's economy. Plus, the Nigeria-British Chamber of Commerce seeks improved trade relations between Nigeria and the United Kingdom. Hello and welcome to the program. Many thanks for joining us. I am Bolaji Akiwale. We will begin with the declaration of President Goodluck Jonathan's intention to run for a second term. It was addressing a crowd at the Eagle Square, Abuja, where he made known his plan to take Nigeria to the next level of economic development.
As a result of government's favorable policies, the private sector is investing over $12 billion in the petrochemical sector over the next 4 years. Of course, this will surely generate jobs for our teeming young people. In terms of gas supply, we have grown from less than 500 million cubic feet per day 4 years ago to about 1.5 billion cubic feet per day currently. Our goal is to attain a 4 billion cubic feet per day over the next 4 years. We have changed the face of agriculture in Nigeria. We move agriculture away from a development program to agriculture as a business. My vision is to create wealth for our people through agriculture. The benefits are showing already from the records of our import bills. Our food import bills declined from 1.1 trillion naira in 2009 to 684 billion naira by December last year, even with our increasing population, a reduction of 40%. Nigeria met its Millennium Development Goal 1 on reducing hunger and extreme poverty 2 years ahead of 2015 target set by the United Nations. And for that, we are recognized and given an award by the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations.
When Business Incorporated returns, we will be listening to Dr. Biodun Adedipe, an economist, on the state of the economy, even as President Goodluck Jonathan declares for a second term in office. Thank you, Dr. Adedipe, for your time with us. I just wanted to comment on the state of the economy.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the program. I will say that as at today, the Nigerian economy is not performing any radically different than what we had as expectation at the beginning of the year, then half year when we did a review, and even now after the third quarter of the year. So the growth rate we expect will not be any different than what we saw last year, and that will put us at somewhere around 6% growth of the GDP. But again, we may not also see a departure from the development side to it, which means no radical improvement in development indices. Unemployment rate, of course, yes, inflation rate gone up a little bit and started coming down gradually. Even at that, at 8.1%, it is still a little bit high, even though single digit. Of course, interest rate is still hanging up there, significantly double digit. Then exchange rate is where the real problem is at the present moment. And that, of course, is informed by what is happening in the oil market internationally and the implication of that for our own economy, given the structure and the dependence we have on foreign earnings relating to oil.
Okay, what has really changed? Because you talked about the beginning of the year, we had projections, we had expectations, and
That's
now
right.
This is the fourth quarter, and to see there was a turnaround, so to speak, from what we thought would be by the end of the year. What do you think has changed?
Well, I would say in terms of what we can put our finger on as a change is the fact that, yes, we still have managed to maintain single-digit inflation rate, because we had expectation that that rate will possibly go up for two fundamental reasons. One is preparation for 2015 general elections, which naturally would mean spending a lot more. Then the other side also, of course, is the recent commitment of the government to infrastructure renewal. Now, there's no doubt that the government has been spending at least more than what we had in the last 2 years on infrastructure. So ordinarily, that would create expectation of inflationary pressures. But somehow, that has been curtailed and contained, but largely because, again, of course, because of the improvement in agric output, especially food, items. So that has helped in a way to stabilize the rate of inflation somewhat. But again, there are other concerns because we expected, for example, that this year, with so much noise, quote unquote, and of course the expectation that there will be improvement in the employment situation, especially marking that over the years we've had growth without development. So the focus had been that, okay, this year perhaps we're going to have growth that is inclusive. But so far, there is still not any strong evidence that we created jobs in the numbers that would make meaningful departure from what we had up until end of 2013, and maybe I should even say up to half year 2014. So now compared to running towards the end of the year. So in that regard also, there's not been any significant improvement, okay? And of course, you can now pick on other development indices. Then again, you pick on perhaps the area of telecommunications. Some improvement there as well. I was looking at the beginning of the year, or let me say end of 2013, and where we are currently, how many active lines we have, and then access to internet, which of course has improved significantly. That is one of the major dimensions to infrastructure when you are looking at the economy of any nation. So yes, we've recorded some improvement in that area. But in some other critical infrastructure areas, power, for example, we haven't really done well. And that still remains a major drag on our economic performance and growing it inclusively.
Now, looking at the fact that our revenue base, which is oil, mainstay is oil still.
That's right.
We're seeing improvement in non-oil,
sure,
but we still have to focus on oil. And now that the oil prices are beginning to decline in the international market, do you think we would have enough to spend if this persists?
Well, there is no doubt that we won't have enough to spend, and that gives me some concern because in looking at the spendings of government, you consider your earnings, then you consider also your plan in terms of spending. Ordinarily, when your revenue source is threatened, your major revenue source is threatened, ideally you should be looking at your expenditure profile, in which case you look at the current expenditure vis-a-vis your capital expenditure. And so far this year, we haven't done very well in any case in terms of implementation of the capital expenditure proposal. We've done an average of about 36% so far. Now, if you look at recurrent, of course, there's nothing like slack in recurrent. Recurrent is something you spend on a day-to-day basis. So we've been spending as planned, so to say. But that really is the area the government should look at whenever we find ourselves in a situation like this. Now, the indication is that for Nigeria to balance her budget for 2014, we need an average price of crude oil at $126 per barrel. Okay? Currently, the indicated benchmark price for the Brent is about $83.26 per barrel. Okay? So even that is because there was a little bit of gain, about 53 cents, in the last 2 days. Now, if that had not happened, and the price kept going down as it did before, we'd have seen the price coming closer and closer to our budget benchmark for this year. And what that portends is that, one, your major source of foreign earnings, which is crude oil, is threatened. On the one side, we're just talking about price. There's the volume that also goes with it. You produce an average of about 2.2 million barrels per day. In fact, looking at between 2006 up until July this year, we produced about 2.21 million barrels per day on the average. Then export, because what you are talking about here is actually export, not the production itself. We did about 1.83 million barrels per day average in terms of export over that same period, January 2006 to July 2014. Now, if you look at that volume itself is not growing. It has been at about 1.8 million barrels per day over this entire period. And that is why the average came to about the same figure. Okay? So if that figure is not growing, that means you have a problem of price coming and therefore what you earn from it will also drop. If that drops, that means you don't have sufficient to deliver your budget. Now, ordinarily, you should begin to look at where do I need to cut in terms of expenditure. And that is where I see the government is not paying enough attention to. Rather than pay attention to expenditure and how we can cut back on unnecessaries, what we are thinking of is, do we have an opportunity to actually borrow more? And then there's also the dimension that, as it is, OPEC itself is not standing as one. Okay, the last 1 week, 1 to 1.5 weeks, Saudi Arabia actually priced crude oil supply to the U.S. lower than it sold to other buyers in order to grow the volume of its sale to the U.S. Now, we also, of course, are aware that the U.S. is producing more from shale oil, and that has also influenced their demand for Nigerian crude and also crude from international oil markets. Now, in terms of demand also going forward, in fact, the projection that OPEC is looking at now, up to year 2035, is that the demand for crude oil is going to drop. So if the demand is going to drop, that means the market will become soft. And if the market is soft, that means we, on the supply side, we don't have a ready market we can push our product to. So in which case, the risk in the medium to long term is that the demand for crude oil will drop. Therefore, what we sell eventually, what we can export eventually, will be much lower. So in which case, we don't have to wait until then before we begin to address the issue of our spending patterns. So rather than have this mind that it will be a flow indefinitely, and that is where I have my own worries about this,